Okay. So good afternoon. My name is Cordell McGarry. I'm the Senior Certification and Compliance Officer at the Department of Procurement Services. The Department of Procurement Services is responsible for the administration of approximately 6 programs that are designed to provide business opportunities to minority and women-owned businesses. We have local programs as well as federal programs in that mix of 6. And today we're going to talk about 2 of those programs, the Minority Business Enterprise Program and the Women-Owned Business Enterprise Program, from the perspective of a new feature that we're offering, which is called the Professional Declaration of Eligibility. So, the Professional Declaration of Eligibility process that's used for the Minority-Owned Business Enterprise and Women-Owned Business Enterprise programs, we consider to be a rather innovative way to provide opportunities for qualified attorneys and accountants, CPAs in particular, to play the role of the certification officer in the review, verification, and recommendation or attestation that an applicant for certification would meet the requirements to become certified with the City of Chicago as an MBE or a WBEE. The professional is involved much in the way as the certification officer is, and we all follow the guidelines for our programs, which is basically the regulations governing certification of minority and women-owned business enterprises, veteran-owned business enterprises, and business enterprises for people with disabilities for non-construction contracts. And we have a URL which is located on our screen, which we can also use to access those regulations which govern the certification process. The regulations are basically what the guidelines that we all use in determining eligibility for certification. For purposes of the PDE process, eligibility basically would include those people that are seeking certification as a minority-owned business enterprise or a woman-owned business enterprise in the areas of non-construction. That is, they're not involved in the construction trades or in that sense, or they're not involved as a supplier or distributor. The eligible firms under this process would also need not have been denied within the past 3 years for certification with the city, nor should they have withdrawn an application that had been submitted for certification within the last 3 years. We do allow circumstances where a firm may have been certified before with the city that actually graduated due to maybe exceeding the size standard, for example. If that graduation has not been within the past 3 years, then that firm would be eligible for consideration. For the professional, we look at, again, an attorney or a CPA. That professional should be licensed in the state of Illinois for at least 3 years and should not have been convicted or found liable of fraud or making false statements. We also will discourage participation by those professionals that may have an ownership interest in the business or familial relationship with the owners of the business that's seeking certification. The process for the professional, basically, again, is to play the role of the certification officer in making the recommendation for eligibility. That, for them, will involve basically doing a full review of the application for certification that is completed and provided by the applicant, not by the professional. Professionals should not be involved in the completion of the application because they're going to be reviewing that application. The professional should conduct an on-site visit interview with the business owners that are seeking certification, and at the end, they should also prepare what's called a summary report where they're detailing the facts and information necessary that will lead to a recommendation or certification. These documents are tested by the licensed professional where they, again, will present their credentials as evidence of that attestation. Once that step has been done, the city is involved in the review process. The professional has submitted they've prepared their certification summary, they've done a site visit, and they've done their attestation, and then they're submitting that file along with the application to the city for formally review. We will basically make every effort to expeditiously review the information that's been presented by the professional, and will concur with them by granting certification or send a preliminary notice of denial or notify the applicant that additional information is needed. Incomplete applications are subject to review under the standard certification process. That's to say that if we don't have enough information to concur with the recommendation made by the professional, we can elect to review the application under our normal circumstances with our normal staff. What happens next? Basically, upon assuming that the firm is going to be certified, which is going to be hopefully 100% of the time, those businesses are certified for a period of 5 years. And at the end of the 5 years, the firm will need to recertify. That recertification process is done under the standard certification process. Once a decision has been issued under the professional declaration of eligibility process, the file can be audited under a full scope basis to make sure that that the professional did comply with program regulations governing certification. Once certified, for that 5-year period, firms must submit an annual no-change affidavit and comply with all other program regulations with respect to continuing their eligibility in the program. So with respect to do's and don'ts, we do not certify or endorse CPAs or attorneys to prepare applications for those vendors seeking certification with the City of Chicago. It is up to the individuals that are seeking certifications to more or less solicit the assistance from the attorneys or CPAs that are involved. We will not endorse or recommend any one in particular for this process. So the documentation that's needed with respect to the process, and for all of our applications for that matter, involves the completion of an electronic application which is found online. The online site is www.chicago.mwdbe.com. This information should be completed online and submitted along with a copy of the Professional Declaration of Eligibility Affidavit, which is the attestation form, which is submitted with the electronic application. That, along with the site visit as well as the certification summary, should be part of the documentation. Information that we look for and that the professional should be looking for as part of the application process would be, of course, information regarding the owners, basically their name, addresses, and contact information, the type of certification that they're seeking, which could be a minority business enterprise or woman business enterprise, ownership information pertaining to the business, information regarding the employees, facilities, as well as financial information regarding the business operations and that of the owners. So we normally look for tax returns 3 years on average for the business as well as the individuals. Any applicable licenses that will be needed for operations, such as a business license or a professional license, should also be included as part of the documentation. Once we take a look at this, we as well as the professionals should be looking at verifying the experience of the applicants, which involves perhaps reviewing resumes, documenting membership in professional associations, listing of equipment that may be used in the operation, as well as any leases governing the facility. Contract information could also be used as well as part of the process. When we certify an individual business for minority or woman-owned certification, we certify not just on the basis of being a minority and/or a woman. We certify the business based on the practice, the actual, let's say, the skills of the business owners or what it is the business does. Like, for example, I use the analogy a lot of times about plumbers. So say my name is Cordell McGarry and I operate a business, let's say Cordell McGarry Plumbing, Inc. I'm going to be certified on the basis of being a minority and owning a majority owner of my business, but I'm also going to be certified on the basis of the skills that I bring. So I provide plumbing services. I'm going to be certified as a plumber. And I would need to provide information that would attest to my experience in that regard. Other documentation that's needed along with the application would be an individual statement of ownership, which should be completed by all the owners of a business, irrespective as to whether or not the ownership composition is minority, non-minority. Every owner that's involved in the business would need to complete this form. In some cases, you may be asked to complete an affidavit of social disadvantage where you're documenting the circumstances by which you're seeking application on the basis of being a minority and/or woman. Attachment 5 is called the IRS Form 4506T. That's a request for a transcript. Again, among with the documents that we normally request as part of the certification process, we do ask for tax returns from the business if they're available. We also request this form in the need, if there ever is a need to verify information that's presented on the tax return. So again, once the application has gone through our process and the business has been certified, we at some time or another throughout the course of the year will do what's called a full scope audit of the business. This involves a full review of the certification process that was prepared by the professional, with the idea of determining whether or not there was compliance with the regulations. Our goal is to basically review 100% of all the PDE files that are submitted. In the event that we find areas of scope that could, result in ineligibility, those businesses can be subject to decertification. We ask that the professional give their utmost attention and professional, process to making sure that the regulations and rules governing the program are complied with. We also will basically assess penalties in the event that that's not the case. In the area of penalties, there are two types. There's technical errors that are not intentional. These errors won't affect the certification outcome and could be perhaps an oversight in the gathering of documents. I mentioned earlier, for example, we request tax returns of the businesses. We normally will request that those tax returns be signed, for example, by the owners. In some cases, we might get applications where we may have unsigned tax returns. These are technical errors that may not affect the certification outcome, but can serve as a reminder for us to make sure that one or the professional that's involved is doing what needs to be done in accordance with the regulations. That type of error, which wasn't done intentionally, can basically be summed up by the first occasion just being a notice that it was done. If it occurs again, perhaps second strike, there may be additional training for the professional that might be involved. If we see it continuing 3 or more times, that professional can lose eligibility for participation in the program. With respect to technical errors from the standpoint of being intentional, if that error is determined it was done to obtain certification, the professional can lose eligibility and perhaps even go beyond that part. Substantive errors, basically, are errors that did affect the certification outcome. Again, that could be due to an oversight, perhaps doing a review of the, let's say, the experience for the individual. There may have been maybe a misinterpretation of information that was provided that, had it been reviewed a little closely, may have been determined that the person did not have the skills or did not qualify. In that case, it would have affected the certification outcome, and in the event something like that happens, we will try to work with the professional by, let's say, for example, adopting a compliance integrity agreement, which would involve more or less being more attentive to the process. In the event of it happening on the second occasion, the professional can be or will be barred from participating in the program beyond that point. Of course, the applicant that's seeking certification will be proposed for decertification. That person will also have a right to appeal that decision. In the event that the substantive error was definitely intentional, the professional will lose eligibility. And with respect to additional penalties that may be assessed, in the cases like that, the matter can be referred to the Inspector General's office or referred to the State Licensing Board for any disciplinary actions that may arise as a result of that. The matter can also be referred to the city's Corporation Council for prosecution in the event that it's determined that that's the case, indeed the case it needs to happen. We ask that the participants in the program, the professionals that are involved in the process, again, adhere to the regulations. If there are ever any questions regarding the regulations or the process, we are available to work with them to answer any questions. We're located at the Department of Criminal Services, 121 North LaSalle, room 806. Our phone number is 312-744-4900. Option number 1 will give you direct you to the certification unit where we can answer any questions that you may have about the process. We also encourage the applicant as well as the professionals, if at all possible, to consult with area assist agencies. These are typical chambers of commerce that are familiar with the city's program. They can be found on our website. They also are involved in the certification process and can maybe answer general questions that you might have as well. Pitfalls to avoid this process would be the submission of incomplete applications or site visits or summary recommendations. I've had circumstances where, for example, the site visit was completed and submitted to our office for review, but the site visit was completed by the applicant, not the professional. We've even seen situations where the summary recommendation was written by the applicant, not the professional. And in talking with the professional, they presume that their signature alone would be sufficient. That's not the case. We ask that the professional be involved totally in the process, doing an independent review, as well as making sure that everything that's being submitted is complete. Lack of details and specifics can impact the certification's outcome, as well as the incorrect type of application being submitted for certification. I've had situations, again, whereby an application for another program that we have, and again, we have 6 programs, was submitted on behalf of the Professional Declaration Eligibility process. That most certainly would not work with us, and it could also delay the process for the client actually getting certified. During the application process, during the review process, we will review the work of the professional, and many times if we have questions regarding the information, we'll reach out to the professional for clarification. In the event that the professional does not respond to us in a timely fashion, and we normally provide 30 days of, to provide information to us, that can result in the application being declined under this process and then processed under more traditional method as well. There is an application fee for the MBE, WBE certification. That application fee is normally invoiced to the client after the application has been received by our office. In the event that the application fee has not been received, of course, we can't proceed any further with the process. So we don't want that to slow down the certification process as well. Okay, so basically we're available for training, outreach, and communication overall. We can be reached on our social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, as well as our own website, www.cityofchicago.org/DPS. So, that being said, are there any questions? Okay. There being none, I'd like to thank you all for attending and listening to this presentation. Again, any questions, feel free to give us a call. Our number is 312-744-4900, and we're located at option number 1 for the certification unit. Thank you so much.